I'll call to order the, what month are we in? September Finance Committee. We did not meet in July. I was out of the country in August. This is the first time I've been here in 3 months. If I forget y'all's names or something or what we're doing, please remind me.
Welcome back.
Anyway, good to see all you smiling faces.
They may send you home.
Okay. Anyway.
Put in your own mouth.
We will begin with the consent agenda. Are there any items anyone would like pulled? Ms. Adams.
C5.
C5. Mr. Montgomery.
C1 and 12.
C1 and C12. Ms. Burke, you got any?
No, thanks.
I want C9, C8, D, and F.
I move approval of the balance if there's none other.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the balance and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. We will go in numerical order, so we'll start with C1.
Item C1, resolution authorizing the sale of certain city-owned property by private sale and to United Health Centers.
Okay, Ms. Adams, I think this was yours. Do you?
Mr.
Oh, excuse me, Mr.
Montgomery.
Montgomery. Do you have a question or do you want a presentation? What would you like?
I don't have desire presentation. I do have a question. I'm in support of it. I just have a question in reference to things that may go along within any deed restrictions that go along with this, if there are any, or is it will just be an outright sale?
The deed restrictions, Councilman Montgomery, would be that the property would have to be maintained for at least 30 years as a health facility that's providing assistance to the neighborhood and with emphasis on those economically and medically disenfranchised residents. Also, that there would have to be at least 2 free community health fairs annually for residents.
Okay. All right. With that, move approval.
Second.
Excuse me, Ms. Burke has a question.
Yes.
Comment.
Mr. Huntley is here, and I'm pleased that the councilman would bring that to the attention because a lot of people don't really understand United Health Centers, and I think this would be an opportunity for him to share the information about Mr. Huntley.
Is he here somewhere?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Please come up, sir. There's a mic right there. If you could give us your name and address and then maybe just a couple of minutes explanation of what this is.
Yes, sir. Sean Huntley, CEO of United Health Centers.
And give us an address for the record. Doesn't matter your business address or whatever.
3009 Walltown Street,
Okay.
Winston-Salem.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
So United Health Centers is a federal qualified health center in that we take care of anyone uninsured, underinsured, Medicare, Medicaid. We've been in existence since 2009 as an organization, as a nonprofit organization, Federal Qualified Health Center. Since then, we've seen, well, actually last year we saw over 8,000 patients that include all uninsured patients with a, as far as savings, about $1.2 million in uninsured patients that we were able to see as an organization. Grew from 3 staff right now at 40 staff members. We are looking at partnerships between Wake Forest, Winston-Salem State, Forsyth Tech, Novant as well, and how can we as an organization provide more care for individuals in the community. Our service area is Forsyth County, so we can serve anyone. We have seen individuals as far as King, as far as Virginia, at our facility. We have 2 locations right now, one on Walltown and the second one is off of Old Greensboro Road. Potentially looking at a 3rd site, which we want to be able to provide dental, behavioral health, medical, as well as a pharmacy at that location. In this particular location, we see that would be a great opportunity for the community, in part, that we are able to provide sustainable care, also a medical home for individuals who live in that area, and right across the street is a pharmacy. So it's a great opportunity for us to collaborate with that pharmacy to see more patients. So,
thank you, Ms. Burke. You had a comment?
Yes, not long ago the mayor did proclaim United Health for you, and people enjoyed it a great deal. Being declared that day make us feel more recognized. I had spoken to the city manager about people having prime care in different areas, and we don't seem to have a prime care. How would that be? Then could you? I know you're different, but you say you do see everybody.
yes, ma'am. So at different counties, at different locations, we can see Medicare, Medicaid patients, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield, mostly the major insurance companies. So as one unique part about United Health Centers, we can be very unique on how we provide care and where we provide care. So one of the things we would like to see us do, being able to expand in other areas of the county, north side as well, other areas as well as the organization. So any way that we can provide that care, especially with partnerships, is very important. We have quite a few partners that we partner with. We're going to try to work with Atkins High School, who have allied health programs there, so students can actually have at-work experience at our health center. We've done that quite a few times.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Adams, do you have a comment?
Yes, somewhat similar. Thank you for you and what your organization do for the community. But I was wondering, and I'm glad to see that a medical facility is coming to the urban core. How would that, and I heard you talk about a relationship with Wake Forest and the other institutions, but we also have, I guess, the Public Health Center over on Martin Luther King. And they're kind of in proximity with one another. You could reasonably walk if you're in pretty good health. And I'm wondering, how is that going to impact or affect that whole situation there? I know you can never have enough, because in some communities we have a prime care or urgent care on every other corner. But I'm just wondering, in that area, how are you guys, you working that out? It just seems like you're going after the same base of customers, the need.
And you mentioned in the
Downtown Health
The
Plaza.
Downtown
downtown health plaza.
okay, so
Health center.
actually we have a good relationship with them as well, because some of their patients who they may not be able to see, we're able to see those patients that day. So it's a referral relationship with the Downtown Health Plaza. We also have sent out some of our patients who need pharmacy to Downtown Health Plaza. And as an organization, as a federal qualified health center, we have to have a referral agreement with the hospital. So we have a referral agreement with Wake Forest, who they can see any of our patients, and once they see those patients, they refer the information back to us as an organization to make sure we have continuity of care. We have partnered with them with some of their providers. Family practice is really one of the departments that we really work closely with. And in particular, we have a really good relationship with their behavioral health. So right now, we're in the process of integrating behavioral health and medical. And Wake Forest has done a really good job with that. So Downtown Health Plaza, we see them as definitely a partner in that we can see the same patients, yes, but we also can share those patients who may live in those areas where our health clinics are located.
And one more question. When do you anticipate the opening of this, the completion, the start, and when is it going to open?
So what we're looking at is ways to, as an organization, to be sustainable. And so this property would allow us to look at ownership of this property, and then also be strategically on how to build a facility at that location. One of the things we know as a federal qualified health center is that homeless population are definitely underserved population. So in that area, we can be able to see some of the homeless population as well. So strategically, how do we find funding for that? And so one of the things we were looking at is, as a federal qualified health center, there are funding for homeless population. So where do we go? How do we go after that funding? So as those funds become available, we would definitely go after those funds to help us build a community health center there.
So you have no start date?
Not yet, no ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Mr. Montgomery had a comment?
Yeah, just in reference to Downtown Health Plaza, just in the work we do daily, from my experience, is that Downtown Health Plaza is challenged in the sense of its capacity, and they're actually bursting at the seams for some of the individuals we work with daily to refer them to services and care. It's sometimes 30 days out before they actually get to see a doctor and physician on site. So there is definitely, in terms of a need for more care in that vicinity. So.
One more comment, Chair.
Go right here. You
Well,
off. Wait, Mr.
Yeah,
Montgomery.
I just want
And maybe that will, and I know your organization is probably working on it. You mentioned all these prominent partners in medicine and others, and corporations. They need to step up, and they need to help you get some of that funding so you can open that facility. Because as Councilman Montgomery said, everyone knows that the health center downtown is over, taxed with patients. And yours would be an added benefit to the community. So I'm challenging the medical community, the corporations, to help get that facility open. That corner has been vacant for a very, very long time, and it would be an added benefit to the community, being the population that lives in those neighborhoods.
I
Thank
agree, totally, thank you.
Ms. Burke?
And one other, since we've been talking about the neighborhood concept with the HUD,
Yes.
and there'll be people moving into that area who will need the service.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think I've gotten enough answers from you. I wanted to ask, when I talk about the prime care, and you talked about it in the urban area, we don't have enough help. We have people who are just suffering, and some cannot get across town to go to those facilities. And I had asked you about
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, we did look into that. The hospitals locate their facilities based on where they think the demand models are. Mr. Page and I did talk about if there was ways we could incentivize those private groups, but they have chosen where they put theirs based on demand models. But we will continue to discuss that with the hospitals.
Lee, could we get on a map where the prime, and I define prime care is where you could go if you cut your
Right.
finger or something.
We can
or
get you a map
you're
of
sick.
all the
It's
urgent-
immediate care, but it's not,
Surgery.
you can't get your kidney
Right.
repaired or something.
Right.
Okay. We've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C1 is approved. The next one is C5.
Item C5, resolution authorizing the city of Winston-Salem to apply for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund 2016 Connect North Carolina grant.
Mr. Montgomery, is this one yours too, C5?
No,
That's yours?
that's a no. Yes.
Excuse me.
Uh,
Who would like to comment on this?
Question or just general description of what this is?
Well, I know what it is, but I'd like the general public to see what we're doing again to affect the quality of life for all of the citizens of Winston-Salem. And that means our physically, mentally challenged, our older citizens and others who can't go to a park and swing on a swing or slide on a slide or anything like that. So if you could just give a brief description of what this grant is about and what we're going after.
Okay. This grant is a PARTIF grant through the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. This is what the acronym. We'll be applying for funds to build a splash pad and park for individuals, specifically veterans with disabilities, in the new Northward Park that's located at 2619 Bethesda Road. Park's approximately 4 acres. The maximum grant amount request can be up to $500,000, and does require a match of 25%. So we're putting it in 125, requesting 500,000. I think we have a good opportunity to receive the grant, and that it's specifically for veterans with disabilities. So we think this will provide a great opportunity for those individuals as well as to benefit children in the area.
And I just want to say, Councilmember Clark and Mr. Page and your staff, thank you again for listening to some of our ideas and being innovative to go find out where we can implement it. Again, everyone knows that a highly overdue focus on our veterans, that they deserve a quality of life as well. And some of them, the facilities that they are presently living in, group homes and others, they take excursion trips. They do things together. And what better place to go than a park together that it will benefit everyone in the group and not just the ones of us that are healthy. So again, thank you. And I got my fingers crossed that we're going to get this.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
I need to make a comment. One of the employees started to step up a little bit. Who will be sort of overseeing this? I need to ask that question.
Mr. William Royston.
Where is he? Because he started, so people need to know that he will be, because one concern I've had, and I talked with Mr. Page about it the other day, when we are contracting work out to do, some of the people are taking too long and giving flimsy excuses. So I think whoever will be assigned to look at all of this money that we're spending, this bond money, and trying to get the parks and different other kinds of things ready, some people are taking too long. And I would like for the city manager to define clearly for us again, when people take too long, we can find them.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. We in the contracts we do have the authority to go after liquidated damages with contractors if they do not meet any of the performance requirements, which include quality and timeliness.
because we as elected officials, we work very hard for that bond to pass. And we're accountable to the citizens in our areas when we're putting various things up. And these people that we're contracting with need not take their time, because some of us are good watchers when they are lagging on the job. So I want us to follow through with it, Mr. City Manager. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Adams, would you like to make a motion on this?
I move for approval.
We have a
Second.
second. We have a motion and a second on C5. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That passes. We'll now go to C8D.
C8D, resolution awarding contract for security officer services.
Is Mr. Bates here? Or whoever's going to speak? Come on up, because I'm the one that had this pulled.
No problem. Darren Redfield with purchasing.
Thank you, sir. Who is our current provider of services?
Langford.
Langford, which is, how has their performance been? Do we rate them, or?
I don't know that we rate them. I'm going to defer to Ryan on the
Okay.
property
Mr.
maintenance.
Newcomb, come up.
We don't have a formal system in place. By the way, Ryan Newcomb with property maintenance. We don't have a formal system in place to rate their performance, but the last year, as you know, we've conducted an employee survey for safety, and there have been some issues noted with the guard performance, manning stations, those kind of things. And so as part of this new RFP, we were looking for a firm that would try to establish a way for us to address concerns we may have with performance, and also training for their officers to make sure we don't run into those issues on the front end.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, Ms. Burke?
Mr. Chairman, you asked a question about the performance. Well, I heard him say you don't have a performance rating. Why not?
Well, my understanding is that it was not included as part of the RFP several years ago. There was sort of no, I would say, sort of premise necessary to establish key performance indexes, those kind of things, to measure performance of the officers and the guards. But I think the situation of the last few years, staff, was made aware of concerns, and we said that needs to be a priority for us going forward.
To have a way to evaluate?
Certainly, yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Adams, do you have a comment?
Yes,
Question?
again, I
Don't
want
go far.
to thank staff. As a lot of you know, I have been on top of this from day one, 09, that the world has changed as we know it, and our employees, as we did, I said, we need to do a survey. I suggested it, and ask our employees, because I was asked that every year at my job when I worked. First question was, did I feel safe in my workspace? And our employees told us they did not. And I can applaud the city manager, again, the staff, for going to do this. And again, security is more than just, and I'm not taking anything away from security personnel that man front desks and gates and that sort of thing. But the technology now is out there that we can fastly improve the situations in our environments for our employees, so that they are able to, if anything should go wrong, they can readily, without having to go pick up a phone, there are other things that would be available for them to let us know their whereabouts and their safety. And I think this is a good step forward, again, to satisfying our customer, our employee expectations as to the survey that we use. I think it's very good.
Okay. Mr. Bessie has his hand up.
Yes, regarding the performance issues that have been raised, does the new proposal and the contract that would be based on it give you the tools you need to effectively address that kind of issue on a timely basis?
I'd like to probably point out two things from the proposal that certainly the committee viewed very favorably. One would be training for new officers and continued on-the-job training. The recommended firm has an enormous suite of courses, and in conversation with them, as part of a transition plan, the city would select the specific courses we would want to require our officers have, both up front and on the job, at a select interval. And then that becomes part of the key performance index system that they employ. So in addition to some of the other metrics they will track for their own employees, we can then add to that KPI system ourselves with things we want to see tracked, and then review that performance at regular intervals with our account manager.
You said there were two things?
Yeah, so the training and then the key performance index system.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Just a quick question. I certainly appreciate the evaluation. Maybe I missed it in a quick reading here, the ratings of each of the firms. How close were the ratings between North State and Allied? I'm just trying to think. We've got a Winston-Salem firm and a Raleigh firm. If we're close enough, I don't know. I'd like to maybe defer to our local hometown folks.
Well, so the committee did review each of the proposals individually. We came together and then agreed upon a score total. And Allied Barton was by far and away the leader in the scoring.
Big gap.
And I would like to add that we were notified 2 weeks ago that Allied Barton has merged with Universal Protection Service. And as a result of that, they have decided to relocate their Greensboro office to Universal's Winston-Salem office.
So we'll have a local presence. Yeah, that's good news. Yeah, thank you.
What I didn't see in here what the year one pass-through costs. What do they consist of? What does the dollar amount go to?
Very good question. The pass-through cost is made up of vehicle cost, uniform cost, some of the employee benefits. I can give you an exact breakdown of that.
So that's expenses that we incur that last the life of the contract, essentially the capital
Right.
costs, startup costs. Okay.
Okay,
I would like to see a breakdown.
Okay.
Anyone else comment? Ms. Montgomery?
Yeah, from a question standpoint, in terms of personnel, current personnel that we have, would this change current personnel?
So, as part of the transition plan, I don't believe Allied Barton at this time has the 3 officers necessary for this contract. So they would be advertising and then hiring 3 officers. And so they did inquire about the current officers, and we told them that it's certainly their prerogative to interview, and if they meet their qualifications for officers and can meet the standards they have set for training and then performance after hired, we certainly wouldn't have a problem with that given their familiarity with the buildings. But that being said, they would have to meet the metrics that both the company would set and that we would set as the customer going forward.
And then the second question I have is, again, it kind of ties back, I think, to Councilman Bessie's question around the actual tools that they will bring. And I understand in terms of the training components. And I know that we had a report back that Councilmember Adams mentioned in terms of how staff felt safety and what other communities do around safety for buildings as well. And just wondering what all that would potentially entail, which is not necessarily what we have here. In terms of that goes a little bit deeper to kind of explain, kind of some of the things that they would be, tools they would use as a part of their overall work.
So I would say one factor is, they are a large company, so they provide security at a lot of different facilities, local governments, private businesses. So you're bringing that experience from a company level. Secondly, technology was a key component for us. They have a really great suite of technology they use for their daily reporting, logging procedures. That's something that the customer would have access to as well. So we could actually in real time, track reports and logs of incidents and things like that. And then the key performance index system is rolled into that software suite. So I think technology was a big push for the committee. It's a difference that we saw from the other 2 firms that submitted. So I think those are 2 of the things that I would mention, right off the bat as what we would see different from what we've had prior to that. And in checking their references, all 3 of the ones that current accounts they provided all spoke highly of their communication and their work with the customer to tailor both training and the services they provide. A couple of them mentioned ways the company reached out to their customers in ways to improve both shifts and things like that as a way to provide additional coverage, but in the end save the customer money in the long run. So I think when you hear things like that as a review committee, that's what we're looking for in a relationship with a security officer firm.
Okay, and maybe it's something that can be provided additionally by Monday, just some of the different tools that are in the technology suite. Because I know when I go volunteer at a school, it doesn't make me feel any less cumbersome coming in, but I know I have to come check in, take my picture, and get my sticker and come in. Is that the type of thing we're talking about? Just wondering, some of those kind of things are we looking at?
Well, I know staff is looking into those things, and I think what we saw in Ally's proposal is experience with dealing not only with a system like a visitor badge system, but also screening systems such as metal detectors. We're not there yet, but you know, staff is looking long term, and so you want a company that's capable of doing those kind of things if we reach that point.
And I have one more comment, Chair. And one of the examples, like Councilman Montgomery was saying, council would like to see some examples of what they do for other companies. Like you said, it's kind of cafeteria style. We'll get to pick and choose what we're looking for. But one of the things I noticed that some companies look at is when it comes to security, you have these incidents that happen and they kind of go below the radar and we don't see them, and staff and nobody else. But there are incidents and things that happen on a regular basis that could be moving towards something bigger. If you have where you notice during the course of your route or shift that there are these two doors that always seem to not be locked when they should be locked, there is something wrong. And that means that now they'll be putting this data together and giving it to staff or whoever, that now we need to look at the film. If we don't have a camera there or something, we now need to find out who is moving throughout these buildings, maybe when we're not here, or even when we're here, whether it's this building or all of the buildings that our employees work in. Those are the types of things that we're looking for this new security program to offer us. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
We have a motion second on C8D. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That passes. The next one is C8F.
Resolution awarding purchase order for compact pickup trucks.
I've got this. Just a quick question. We had budgeted 150,220, and the low bidder was 171.
Correct. So we're going to reduce the quantity to fit our budget. We're going to buy one less truck
So
at this time.
We're going from 8 to 7.
Correct.
Okay. I'm assuming 21,460 times 7 that equals that number.
Right. Right.
Okay. I'll move approval. That's the only question I have.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Next one's C9.
Item C9, consideration of items regarding construction contracts for fire stations number 7 and number 9.
Again, this is for me. One of these fire stations is in my ward, and it says the revised estimate for the project was $3,338,000. What was the original budget? I'm trying to be sure we're keeping our bond money.
2.5.
2.5.
There were some items, I believe, identified by inspection, such as sprinklering, that they were going to require after the original set was developed, and that was additional cost.
Could someone, Robert, whoever, just send me the blueprint of whatever? You just email it to me of the Arbor one, so I just know what it looks like. I don't know how much it changed from the original. Okay. I'll move approval on that since I was the only one that had a question on that one. Any other questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. Last consent is C12.
Item C12, ordinance designating certain property as a historic landmark.
Mr. Montgomery, is this yours?
It is. I requested this in terms of looking at the local historic landmark status designation. And my question, and I don't know if we want to go through a full presentation now, but I just have a simple question, and that is whether or not this property is going to be used as a private dwelling, or what's the use of the property.
Hi, Michelle McCullough, Planning, Historic Resource Commission. Yes, this is a private property. Currently, it's residential. It has always been residential. The owner is the third owner, and the house has the same footprint as when it was built.
And it's in the Washington Park area, I believe.
It is in the Washington Park Historic District, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Comment.
Go ahead. Yeah.
As normal on these items in the local historic landmark status is requested, particularly when properties are to be used as a private residence for an individual. I cannot support those. I do think we have a lot of work to do to continue to do preservation in our community, but I look forward to how we leverage the local historic landmark designation and the tax deferral incentive that comes along with it for a larger impact in our community. And when we use it for just simple private property residences like this, I think is more for the individual who owns the property benefit than the broader community, although there is history tied to residents like this. But I think I'm pretty consistent in the sense of my position on this, and I will not be supporting it for that reason, not because I don't think it's a beautiful home, but for that purpose.
Ms. Adams, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say again, Ms. McCullough, thank you for all of what your organization and staff does for this. But we know that we've been hammering this one too since some of us came on the board, and that you have moved to change some of the requirements, and this one kind of was before the new requirements. And not saying the new requirements are going to prohibit homeowners or anyone else. I would say that's a General Assembly issue and not us. But I can understand what the council member is talking about, and some of them, that there seems to be somewhat of it puts us in a precarious situation that we are giving breaks to people who own an old historic something, and the rest of us don't get it. And it has to do with economics. I'm just being honest, that they are able to access this. And I think that's what makes it so difficult for some of us to approve these homes that constantly come to us that some of us will never see, and neither will the taxpayers. So, again, I just thank you for all the work that you put in.
Ms. Burke?
I would like to also thank Ms. Cullen. Also, we had the TVA meeting not long ago, and a lady who did this survey, the study, when they talked about this city, they said people who come to this city from the survey, how they like coming to Winston-Salem. They come back more than one time, and that is a plus. They also looked at what we're doing with the downtown, how people like seeing the kinds of things that's happening in this city. And then when you talk about historical homes, there are some people, when they travel, they like to look at the history of the city. So they even think that we should have a little more signage so people will know which directions to go. So I want to tell you, I am for the recommendation, and I appreciate what you're doing because it helps out the city. People love history. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could offer a comment, and then we'll move on. I struggle with this. There have been some, and I do differentiate between homes and commercial. Commercial properties, oftentimes they're obsolete in their current use, and I would give the Nissan building and really the Reynolds building as examples where the Nissan building had lower ceilings and just the floor plan, et cetera, did not lend itself for a modern office environment. So those, I think, make sense from an economic development standpoint. I struggle more with homes, and some I voted for, some I haven't. What I would suggest, I'm not sure, I'm probably going to abstain today, but Mr. Mayor, I would suggest maybe, I'm assuming after the election, we may have assuming those that are here, or whoever is here, I shall say.
You're going to be here, Mayor, don't you worry.
I'm not worried about him. That we put on our strategic plan, or whatever you want to call it. To me, the real challenge I have with these, if we approve this, they get this credit forever, pretty much. And people say, well, you don't spend much money on historical preservation. By George, we do. We spend several $100,000, of which we have no control, because we've already approved those. Matter of fact, Mr. Garrity, you might want to get us the number on what is the total tax deferment for all the historic properties, and I think it's $200,000 or $300,000, something in that range.
Right.
I see Paul kind of nodding. So right now, without us even doing anything, we're going to spend over $200,000 on economic preservation, and I have no trouble with that. But one year I might want to spend it on homes, and next year I might want to help Old Salem redo the brother's house or something. I just hate a budget where we have locked ourselves in forever, and I think it would be good for us. Again, this is just my opinion, and there ain't going to be 8 other people in the room, to communicate back to Raleigh, either to put sunset clauses on these or allow us, maybe over time that amount diminishes and then it has to come up for renewal, so that we at least have some say-so over this hundreds of thousands of dollars that we might want to use in different places at different times. The other challenge I see, and I'll address this more to homes, this town's getting old enough where a lot of houses, and what's the number of years they need to be?
For historic designation, usually 50, and then you have to make an exceptional,
Okay.
nomination. You have to really present.
I would dare say a
Yeah.
lot, if not most of Buena Vista is
Yep.
50 years. My house I know is, I think, there now. Is yours there too?
Yep.
Yours too, yeah. So, Ms. Burke, your house 50 years
I
old?
wrote the city manager the other night, and I have lived in my home ever since 1963.
Yeah.
So I think that's 50, 60, something, do the math. So, and it gets back to Ms. Montgomery's point of how do you be fair about it? If you got an entire neighborhood, and I do know a little bit, not a lot about Washington Park, but there are a lot of nice historical homes up there as well. Which ones get the benefit and which ones don't? And we say, well, there's a lot of issues that come with this, strings attached, however you want to define it. But I know a lot of homes, I can only speak for my ward, that are in this age group, if not older, that they have been immaculately preserved. So I would just suggest that we put that on the agenda, and we'll see where it goes with that. And I see Mr. McIntosh looking at me.
Yeah, the first thing I want to talk about is it's not just the age of a property. It's a landmark. Is it really a landmark? And there's a distinction between just being old versus being something that really means something more than the average old house in the community. The other thing is that when you were talking about functional obsolescence on the commercial side, I think when this program was started, big old houses had reached that same point. People were not interested in keeping them up. The exodus from downtowns was occurring, and so these houses got cut up into apartments and whatever. I agree with y'all. I think there needs to be, to me, should be an incentive to do something that the market is not taking care of. And right now, the market kind of is taking care of these big old houses. They're coming back into popularity. Houses in Washington Park and West End are doing very well, but it does signal a commitment from us to our historic character, which brings people in. And I think there's lots of houses in Winston-Salem that could use a little love, and that we should participate in helping them with. So, but I do think there's some tweaking that could be available here. If some of that was, if not all that credit was given, but some of that went towards other projects, other historic projects in town, Patterson Avenue. I mean, there's just some really great places that we need to do additional work on, but I agree it needs tweaking.
Okay, Mr. Bessie.
There are always things you can improve about this kind of program, and I think the suggestions deserve serious consideration. One thing that I would note, though, in justification for the use, even when it's not a public facility that's open to specific inside tours, there is value to the surrounding community from the preservation. There are additional expenses involved in preserving an older home or structure of any kind. There are restrictions that come with the designation, things you can't do, things you have to keep in place, things that you have to maintain. So, it is in essence, a payment for value received, and the property values of the surrounding neighborhood are positively impacted by a historic landmark structure that is maintained in good condition and close to the original form. So there is community value, and we're not giving away something for nothing with this kind of thing. If it's a properly vetted, properly designated landmark, then we get value for that.
Okay, any other, Mr. Montgomery, I think you're here to hear me.
Yeah, just two things. I know it's been mentioned before, but I know I've mentioned it most times when I talk about the private homes, and that is about having some type of, is there opportunity to connect, to create a tour of some sort for these, that we've had these in place, and having some type of mapping system across the community that helps connect the properties in a way that, although you may not be able to go in them, you can at least see them and even know some history about each one of the properties, where they are as we do this, just in a way to continue if we're doing them, again, what that additional public good that comes out of it. But then the other piece of it is just, again, we do have, and I think it's maybe worth it and merit a point to maybe add to a thought, and I don't know, city attorney will be able to know whether or not we can add additional restrictions to what exists here, meaning if it's 50%, up to 50%, do we set a bar 25% for private properties, or is that something that we do just in terms of how we look at it for what the cost benefit is for overall community? I'm not saying that that's the compromise, but at least things to look at in the conversation, because again, going back to the larger properties, it's a much more substantial dollar amount that has a much more impact in terms of the economic development of Reynolds Building and the Neeson Building and the Nissen Building, what that meant for that project actually happening. So it was more of an economic development incentive than just the bare bones of the historic nature of it that helped the project move forward. And so I think considering all those pieces makes a difference.
Yes. As you all know, at the upcoming League of Municipalities Conference, the goal setting for next year's legislative packet as to what we're going to propose to the legislature. I would ask that the city attorney put something together, or with staff, look at it, get with the School of Government, see what the history is on this with the state, how this came to be with the legislature, and how we can tweak it and maybe even put it in the goals package for other cities that may be suffering from the same fate. Councilmember Montgomery, unlike you, I believe, and you too, Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Burke, I believe when they get almost 50% of their taxes off, 50% for me would be $1,000 off of my taxes. Okay? I'll take that. I would designate my house that. And that means that everybody in the city should get the same opportunity. And what I'm saying, too, is if we connect them and say, okay, well, what's the common good that we can do with this to make everybody kind of feel all right with it? If we do a day of touring, we need to go in the house. I don't need to just drive by and see the outside. It's the inside, and help me with this, Mr. McCullough. It's the inside that the value is where it comes from, those innate earnings and things like that. That's what I would like to see. And if we do this, I'd also like to see us, as I said, the city attorney, we should take that 50% down on residential. And like we said, we should figure out a way as to how we make it palatable that commercial buildings are going to benefit the tax base versus people decreasing the tax base because they own a house that happens to be 70 years old and they want to live there. I'm into historical perspective. But again, the world is changing, and we need to change with it, and we need to tweak this one bad because we go through this every time one of these properties come to us. So, Chair Clark, you and the mayor.
Let me suggest something. There have been a number of good questions raised. If I could suggest we just hold this in committee and have our city attorney see if there's any options here, if that's okay.
Can I make a comment, though?
Yes, ma'am.
Because in your packet also was the revision to the landmark application. So I did some of that research when we had to do that, and we were back and forth with the state and such. So can I answer a few questions and maybe give a little light? Still more light could be done, and again, dress for future. There are two things that have to be proven: significance, special significance, and integrity. That is a statewide thing. There is not a lot in the ordinances and such about what it is. So when we went, can we add special things? Like, can we say, if you want to make it residential, make it harder? We tried that. Didn't get a lot, even our legal, it's really not set up for that. But I do want to make you aware what we tried to do, and please take a minute and look at that new application if you can. We're going to be having it online and make it easier. But one of the things, and Winston-Salem is one of the 3 cities in the states that does this, our tax assessor reads it and reviews it that it's up to 50%. So whatever is designated is what they get the tax advantage on. We're one of 3. Most places automatically give 50. So when it comes to you, there is a section in the applications that says what part's designated. You're right, Councilperson Adams, everybody's going to say everything, because, and a lot of these, everything is historic or something. But if you have somebody that says, I never want anybody in my house, which staff has been trying, we're putting together, there's information online already, a 1-page sheet. I've been trying to get these houses 3D photographs so we can take people in them, like even people who have, challenges, physical and mental, you talked about earlier, that they can go through them. They don't need to be there, So we are trying to do this, and we've had an organization working with us and doing it for free. We've gotten about 6 structures, a lot of them in Old Salem, come to do some testers. But that's the second thing we are trying to do. But when it comes to you, if you really do feel, especially for a residential, you have the option of saying, we only approve the exterior. And that comes to you at the very end. The HRC can go through and say why it has special significance, but it's not. Recently, staff has sent out a mailing to all the 134 applicants, and we've asked them those questions. Will you make your house open? Will you this? We've gotten a lot of yeses back, and we're also trying to to do events during May that have these open, so you can come and see inside, because that is where the goodies are sometimes. So you want to get through them, and we're trying. We did 2 last May, which was really good. It was a great opportunity. But and we're always open for more ideas. We're trying to do tours. We've done a bus tour, with the trolleys. We're always looking for ideas. So, but you have a little more control. Maybe we wanted to let on, but we're trying to do that with that new application, though, to show you. And if you see entire, and then you see residential, and you see, wow, it does keep the neighborhood, though. It does keep the environment. It does have value when people come to visit and go through outside, but nobody's ever going to get in. You have that ability. So
Okay, thank you.
I do want to put a little light.
Ms. Burke, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I hear you talk about all the history, and when Mr. McIntosh mentioned Patterson Avenue, there are some historical houses there. But the sad part, even though minorities are living there, that black history. Now, Mr. Montgomery lives in probably one of the most historical houses in the city.
Yep.
He has connected in his house the history of Winston by the people who lived in that house on both sides, the Bruce and the Atkins. It's a story to be told in that home up there on the hill. And what's happening, we're letting right near him, looking at Campbell and Rich, those homes were nice little homes, but they're going down around him. But a person traveling out where I live, the first thing they do is look to your left and then they look to the right, Dr. Malone. Home. It's going down, but yours.
Okay, so without objection, we're going to keep that in the committee a month, and Ms.
Thank you.
Carmen, you're going to get us a little information there. And I think the mayor's heard us maybe put this on the discussion agenda. That is all I had for the consent. We will now go to the general agenda, and we have 5 items, and I'm going to try to finish by 6 o'clock because I have to be somewhere at 6. C1, or G1, Ms. Saunders?
Item G1, resolution awarding contract for investment consulting services to the city of Winston-Salem.
Ms. Saunders, I understand this was on last month, but you didn't get time to it, so can you give us a kind of a 2-minute introduction?
I will. So attached for your consideration is awarding a contract for investment consulting services for the city. Historically, we have retained an investment advisor to help us make recommendations as far as hiring investment managers and making allocations of our investments. And this is for advisement of our long-term investments. It's our pension plan. It's our risk reserves and our employee benefits reserves. So it's our reserves that are expected to be maintained greater than 5 years. Attachment A is a listing of all the city's cash and investments. 361 million of those cash investments are in a trust. Those are the monies that we're talking about today, using an advisor for. In March of 2016, the city advertised and requested proposals for 10 local firms, of which we received 5 responses from those, and we interviewed all 5 of the vendors who responded. A team made up of myself, assistant finance officer, an investment analyst in-house, Greg Turner, assistant city manager, and Napoleon Richardson, who is the chair of the WSFRS commission, were the group that interviewed the individual vendors. Proposals were scored on the following criteria. High weight was given to our public pension plan experience that they had, staff availability, the understanding of the investment policy that council adopted, a plan of action, and if they had a local office. A summary is attached for the rankings of the individual firms. To note, our current fee that we pay for investment advisory services to 2 separate firms is $135,000. The first firm was Alex Brown of $125,000, and we recommend approval of the resolution to award the contract to Alex Brown for a 3-year contract term with the option to execute for 2 additional years. Alex Brown has worked with the city for over 30 years. They're a local office across the street. They've advised us through several economic downturns. They've provided consistent leadership and education through multiple market cycles. I'd also note under their leadership, the equity investments that we have with the city have earned more than 9% over the last several years. If you blend that in with the fixed, we're still well over 7%, which is well over what our required investment return is for the pension plan, which is very important because that keeps the cost of that plan down for the city. In December of 2015, the subsidiary office of Alex Brown was owned by Deutsche Bank, but it was sold to Raymond James. That transaction did close in September. It's a positive thing. It actually gives them more resources in our local office. It's the same office that's been there since 1946, and it's the largest branch in the southwest of Alex Brown. Alex Brown also has proven a commitment to help us recruit investment managers who are minority and women-owned. 30% of our active managers are either minority or women-owned. We are also actively looking at another minority manager at the present time to add to the portfolio. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Let me just make a comment before we open up for questions. I, as the head, chairman of the Finance Committee, sit on the Police Retirement Board, which about 150 of this is
That's correct.
on that.
Yeah.
And I also sit on the Ramco Board, which has some money and some other folks.
Right.
I did not sit on the committee that did this, but I did meet with Ms. Saunders several times afterwards. I think they did a very thorough job, and I do endorse her recommendation as your liaisons to those committees. With that, can I ask you one other question before we get started? I did notice, and I was not here at that meeting, but a question was asked. We do have a minority-owned bank, Mechanics and Farmers, that has a branch here.
Mm-hmm.
Have we contacted them about them taking some city deposits?
We have not at this point in time. We are going to be doing a request for proposal for banking services later on in the fall. However, we do, if you'll notice on our list, we do have some deposits with other banks in the city. And that's normally not done through a request for proposal process as much as if a bank comes to us generally and tells us that they would be willing to give us a certain rate, and they generally approach us. One thing it might be noted is that when banks hold public fund monies, they actually have to collateralize those monies, which means they have to have that exact amount of money in a different security. So not oftentimes, banks actually want to hold a public deposit. It would kind of depend. So,
and the collateral has to be what? Treasury bills?
It does.
Or something? Yeah.
Yes, it has to be highly rated.
It's not necessarily doing somebody a favor, because they have to basically go buy T-bills with the money. Anyway, I see we had a number of questions, Ms. Adams.
Yes, again, I can appreciate staff when you come together and you discuss as to how we issue out these contracts. I can appreciate Alex Brown, us doing business with them since 1946. But the one thing that I look for staff in the city of Winston-Salem, we are the leaders, and we're supposed to lead by example. If we never give minorities and diversity opportunity, the envelope would never get pushed. And what I'm saying is, even though we're saying the banks have to approach us or other agencies or whatever, we have a minority-owned business in this city. And our population is over, 38, 39% African-American? What is it? Okay, 34 include Latino, Hispanics, and everyone else. We're in the 40% plus range. I think it's up to us to realize that this council has been going in this direction now for 7 years, and it would be apropos for us to approach businesses like Mechanics and Farmers Bank or other banking managers or asset managers, investment managers, as you said, as to what we can do, again, like we do the minority businesses, to bring you into the fold. The city has the taxpayer money of minorities, period. That money should be somehow generated to other businesses that can do business with the city that just happen to be owned by them. I understand there is a criteria, but we won't know what that is until somebody brings that to us. Yes, some of the members of the council have approached with the city manager that we need to invest some of this money in Mechanics and Farmers and any other bank that we have. Those banks that we have been in the banking business forever. If we don't make the move to include diversity, diversity will not happen. The same people that's been making the money all forever since we've been in this country will continue to make the money, and we won't have the opportunities for our younger opportunities for other African Americans and minorities to be a part of this industry. Money is always the business that makes the money, and until we open up those doors of opportunity, our boys and girls won't get that. So my suggestion, Chair Clark, as you said before, we need to look into how we can make this a win-win with our community. Because they look at what we do and they know that there's no money coming through. We all know it's no money coming through the African-American community. But we sit here and we look at these numbers and we go, and I'm looking at the banks, we need to make a better effort to utilize our other businesses that are minority-owned businesses, not just people pouring sidewalks and putting a nail in something, but people who are business-minded, and we need to do that.
Councilmember Adams, I failed to mention to you that we actually do have an account with Mechanics and Farmers with Risk Acceptance Management Corporation. I forgot to mention that. We do. And it's an active account that we use for checking.
And let me just comment. As you'll know on page 5, we have money in a lot of different buckets.
Mm-hmm.
We have to keep so much cash in the bank, just like everyone sitting at this table, to pay your bills.
Right.
And as you know, our money, our big amount, the property tax tends to come in at kind of one time, and then we draw on it, and when's the lowest our cash is? Probably end of the summer, about right now?
Right now.
And then people start paying their property tax in
Starting to
September,
come in
October,
right now.
so that
Mhm.
it goes back up. So it's kind of a zigzag type thing. So that's why if you look at the top, we do keep a X amount of cash. What we're really talking about today is the investment portion of it.
Correct.
And for example, with the police retirement, there may be a 23-year-old officer out there that we have some money that if he lives and works for us for 30 years and retires, we're going to pay him some money. So it could be 25, 30 years out that obligation will come due. And that's the type of money we're talking about here, is the investment. And we typically keep 40% in fixed income, which is basically bonds, and 60%, I believe, in stocks, something like that. And what we're looking is to hire someone to manage that. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, about 30% of these funds are with minority managers, and I do believe they're out of Atlanta. At least one is, I know. And I don't know of any minority managers. I don't know of many local money managers.
Well, and let's make sure we have the right distinction. We're hiring today an advisor. If you look on Exhibit A, the last two sections, those are managers. So Alex Brown advises us on, for example, how much money we need to have on a large cap stock fund, how much money we need to have on a small cap stock fund, how much we need in the bond market. So that's what our advisor, Alex Brown, is doing. And they also advise us, they vet, if you will, out the different managers to make sure they're a qualified manager to hold the city's assets.
And they're the ones that recommended these various names on
Correct, correct.
You know which ones are the minority?
I do. Garcia Hamilton is the minority manager.
Okay.
Douglas Lane, not Douglas Lane, Ernest Partners is a minority manager. Fairpoint Capital is a woman-owned manager. WCM might be, I can't remember, but one of those. And then we're looking at one from Durham, who's a minority manager. That's not on the list yet because we're still looking at them.
And could you just get back to the committee how much money we do have at Mechanics and Farmers? That would be of interest.
I will.
But again, she's reiterated this. You're not doing a bank a favor by putting deposits in it, because they have to collateralize it 100%.
But excuse me, Chair, we won't know that until they bring us information. I know what they're telling us, but we're making a request, a suggestion and a request. And we also need to find out, when we say that, I know you may not know any minority managers, asset managers, investment managers. I'm sure there's some in town, because I've gone to enough workshops where they're there and they always ask me, how do we get to do business with the city of Winston-Salem? I'm saying that we need to look at this with an open mind, like we did with minority and women businesses, that we open the door and have some discussions, maybe a group like we did with the minority, bring them in and let them tell us what they can do for us or what it is we need to do. Because it's not always that we're in the right all the time.
All right. Ms. Burke, you be next.
I agree with the councilwoman. If you do not ask, it will not happen. And when you look at this city, it has been the folks with the money continue to make money. And if a door is not open, and I've pushed hard for women, and this was diverse, And women are still struggling, even though they say we have shown so much percentage of women businesses, but we are not still where we ought to be. And one thing that has happened, when we have made recommendations for minority firms, some smarties in this city would go back and do an investigation and try to find act like our firms are not credible. That's what I call a conspiracy against people. So I believe now, Mr. City Manager, you here is clear. We're not going to let your staff come and give us information that we are going to accept it because they give it. We want you to do a thorough investigation. And when Mechanics and Farmers Bank came, it was stated that we wanted to do business with them. Now, I don't know how much business we're doing with them.
She's going to get that.
But we were, and that was one of the things that we made clear. They should be a part. You take this law office that we have here. They only had a couple of lawyers, and I initiated that. We will no longer give all our money to, what was that firm?
Walmart does a lot of work, yeah.
And so they didn't even have minority on staff. And then they hired a minority, but you didn't know he was a minority.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Montgomery, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. I think the comments and conversation has been well. And again, I know that this particular item is specific in terms of what action we're taking. I thank you and your staff for the well job of giving us presentation information. But because of the comment that Councilman Clark made earlier and asking about Mechanics and Farm, I did want to make sure that information that we do bring back in any type of process that may be put out in the future, that we don't hold anyone else to a standard that we didn't hold the other individuals on this list to. And so if the process that we use for those who are here, who are already doing business with us, if we're looking at opportunities to do business with individuals in the future, if we didn't use that process for these individuals, then I would ask that we use the same process used for those who are already doing business with, if we're going to look at additional work, that we don't hold them to a standard that we don't hold the current ones to.
Okay, and then you'll get that information to us on Mechanics and Farmers. Thank you. We have a motion to move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
I'm just abstaining.
We have one abstention. So we have 3 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstention. And Ms. Saunders will get us some information on Mechanics and Farmers. Okay, thank you. We'll now go to G2.
Item G2, resolution amending preliminary approval of issuance of multi-family housing revenue bonds.
Mr. Brooks, can, see here? Yeah, there you are. Excuse me. Could you come and give us a 2-minute on this? And I know this has been around for a few months here. We'll see if we can get it moved forward.
Good evening, Chairman and members of Council, Mayor. This item was presented to Council before in April, and a resolution was adopted that gave preliminary approval to the issuance of revenue bonds to finance the acquisition of rehab and equipment of affordable housing for Rolling Hills Apartments. At that time, I think the prospective purchasers had only estimated the cost of repair per unit at being $15,000 per unit, which was just enough to cover minimum housing codes. We've had some extensive meetings with them and others over the past several weeks, and that per unit cost now has increased to $42,760 per unit, including contingency. We met at the complex with their construction folks. Council member McIntosh was there. We toured the complex. They actually showed us what they intended to do, and we believe that with the increased cost per unit, that they are covering all that needs to be covered, that will not only bring the units into minimum housing code compliance, but will make substantial improvements that I think all of us would have liked to have seen from the outset. In addition to that, since that time, there were HUD representatives that met at the complex. We were called out that day, and they had indicated that they would be back to do their own cost estimate. Since that time, they've had a change of direction, because if some of you may have read, there was a REAC inspection that was done where it was scored an 80, which a lot of folks question how it could have scored that high.
At 80, you said?
80.
80.
Passing, and how it could have
Some
scored
of us got through
high.
college scoring 80, so don't. Yeah.
But they have since had a change of direction, but there will be another inspection conducted by HUD in September.
Okay.
So they do plan to come down again in September. We had originally suggested to the prospective buyers, maybe they should wait until after that HUD inspection so that if there were items that they had not covered, that HUD identified, they could then include them. They have decided to move forward prior to that inspection, but we still feel pretty comfortable that all of the items that might have been identified in the inspection are now covered in their recently revised documents.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Brooks? Mr. McIntosh?
I just had a comment. I was out there that day, and when the initial estimate came in, and we were talking about them spending $15,000 or $17,000 a unit, I just scratched my head and said, "There's no way these units can come up to a place that's fit for habitation for that amount of money." Looking at the condition that they're in, but in conversation with the folks from the
Steel Group
company, it was pretty clear that there was not an incentive on their part to not spend money. The more money that comes into the project, the better off they do. So I feel like they're going to spend money on the project and bring the units up beyond just minimum housing code. So walking away, I felt pretty good that their intentions were to really do an excellent job on the property.
Thank you. Mr. Montgomery, you had your hand up, and then I get, Mayor, go ahead.
I just wanted to congratulate Councilmember Montgomery for keeping folks' feet to the fire on this particular project. I think it should be noted that it's almost three times increase in the amount of rehab work there, and the only way it'll pro forma is that they get an additional amount of housing finance bonds from 5.6 million to 7.8 million. So I think that's what you were alluding to. If they can cover it from that, it'll be a great project. I think kudos to you.
Mr. Montgomery, I'll let you.
Comment, and then I know that there's a representative here from Steel, and I would actually like the opportunity for him to come up, just because I would like to say thanks to him and to their group for the willingness to rise to and meet the issues that were raised, particularly when we see and have seen consistently the conditions, those who have been able to go out and see firsthand some of the conditions that were there. The newspaper stories and the television stories that have been run only give you a small snippet of some of the experiences that individuals have been living in there. And as the council person for the area and as a neighbor to this neighborhood, I think that the new owners will be able to make an investment that we won't be here in the next 5-7 years having the same conversation, but an investment that truly is, as I think Steel Group has requested, a partnership in being able to bring the properties up with an investment in the property that will make affordable living conditions that are quality, affordable living conditions in the community. Because you can find a cheap place to live, but if it's not of high quality or good quality, then what are we really doing for our citizens? And so I think that by us supporting this and inducing the bonds, that we are supporting not only affordable housing in the community, but quality affordable housing and helping to transform a property that has been for decades challenged when it comes to the conditions of the housing stock that people have been living in and allowed to live in.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I have one, and I don't know who to address this to, but we're actually going to be issuing revenue bonds. Now, I read what's on here, and revenue bonds, and we do issue a lot of revenue bonds now, mostly in the water and sewer area. But they're backed up by the revenue generated by the facility, not by the supposed GO bond that's is paid for by the general obligation of the city. But Lee, I guess I'll address this to you. Is there going to be a moral obligation? I'm concerned that somebody does this and then they don't pay it, and suddenly somebody comes to the city and says, I know legally we're not obligated, but is there going to be some pressure put on us? Well, it's going to mess up our name if the city of Winston-Salem revenue bonds default on it? Would that hurt our future ratings?
Let me ask Ms. Saunders. I'm not aware that it would, but Ms. Saunders, or the attorney.
So I guess they could take the apartments if whoever buys these. Okay.
Correct, and it will not impact.
All right. Thank you. I worry more about our reputation. And obviously, revenue bonds on a water treatment plant, we probably wouldn't allow someone to come in and take our water treatment plant. We would probably step in, but we have a little more control because our utilities commission is reviewed and critiqued each year by the city and the county. Anyway, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
David is here from.
Oh, David, would you like to come up? Excuse me. If you come up to the microphone, give us your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is David Asarch. I'm with Steel Properties. I'm the Vice President of Development there.
Give me an address so we have for record.
Sure. 6875 East Evans Avenue in Denver.
Denver. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Could you offer just a few comments, whatever you'd like to?
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilman Montgomery. This has been a long process for us, and we certainly take it very seriously, and we appreciate how seriously the city's taking it. And it's helped us take a deeper dive into the asset to make sure that we're appropriately addressing everything. So I want to commend Councilman Montgomery for that. And we understand that the councilman's concerned and the city council's concerned and concerns, and our goal is to get in there and fix it and get it back to the standards that the residents deserve. And we believe you'll be quite pleased with the finished product. We have a very strong construction team, and it's a soup to nuts rehab. So it's going to look great when it's finished, and we appreciate the city's support.
Ms. Burke, do you have a question? Go ahead.
And especially in the housing, I always say to them, when are you coming back when the project has been completed? And how long you intend to keep it a good project?
Yeah, and so this is a long-term hold for us. Under the tax credit program, you actually can't sell the property for 15 years. So all of our, not only the city's interest, but our lender, our investor, the state, everybody wants to make sure that the rehab ensures that the asset will last for at least 15 years, and it will last for much more than that. But also that we're operating it according to, standards. There's federal HUD regulatory standards. There's NCHFA, the issuer of the tax credit and the bond standards, and our lender and investor. And so we have a very strong compliance team in Denver, a very strong national maintenance staff to make sure that we're keeping all of our properties in great condition. And, across our portfolio, we were talking about the REACT scores, and obviously there's some subjectivity there and some scratching of the head of why the property currently got an 80. But across our portfolio, our average REACT scores are in the 90s, and we take our responsibility as an owner of affordable housing, which is all that we do, very seriously. Absolutely, happy to.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Burke, Ms. Adams.
Yeah. Again, I just have to say I'm not a warm fuzzy about this. I'm not going to act like I am, because in business, and when you're dealing with people who are the least of us, and this property, it shouldn't have never gotten to the state that it's in. And if your company is the owner of the property in the organization, then I do hold you accountable for its appearance and everything about it. And I feel as though this council, and I commend Councilmember Montgomery, I feel as though, we're trying to make a win-win, but in essence, we're really not really giving you a slap on the hand or anything. We're providing you the resources to go do a do-over. but with taxpayer money. Even though you're gonna pay us back or whatever, it's still taxpayer money. You talk about the bricks and mortar, and in your report and all the reports we've heard now for weeks, there are lots of brick and mortar, but I haven't heard anything about asset building, and that's the people, and that's the community. And you can build a pretty house, a pretty neighborhood. You might want to take a page from Habitat and some other community development organizations. If you're not working with the people to ensure that the community is sustainable and that there are programs and resources available to them to improve their quality of life, your project, like I was told, you got 15 years. In 15 years, if not earlier, we'll be back. You'll be back. So my advice to you and the Steel Group is you might want to put together a asset building plan that supersedes almost or works with your brick and mortar, because that's the most important thing, is the people. This never would have gotten here if the people hadn't risen up. You've seen how loud their voices are. And I can tell you, they're going to hold you more accountable than we are. And I commend them for that. So again, I congratulate you on moving forward, and I wish you much success. But I also know you're going to need that asset building plan to go with this brick and mortar.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
Yeah, just to also just state that one of the things that was important to me in supporting this was to be sure that there was not a relationship moving forward with the current owners of the property and with Steel Properties, that they would not have an interest in the new ownership, which is correct. They will not have an interest.
That's right, and we're completely unaffiliated with the current owner. We're purchasing the property from them, but we don't currently have control over the asset, but I certainly understand your frustrations.
And the additional piece was that in terms of even the investment in having community center space on site, which has been a challenge there in the community. At times, different owners have open units up to be available, and then they would go away from being available. There was space in the back of the building where a computer lab was, and then that wasn't available. But as a part of this, there will be dedicated space for community, which again can be leveraged potentially by community groups to come in and support. And so again, those are the type of things I think that help benefit the people even beyond the investment in the actual structure. And again, those are pieces that were important to the community, and since important to me because it was important to the community.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve? Move for approval. Second. We have a motion and a second on item G2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much.
Next is G3. Secretary, read that.
Item G3, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem for the fiscal year 2016-2017 federal housing fund.
I have been informed by the city attorney that Mr. Montgomery needs to be excused from voting on this. Do I need a motion, or do I hear any objections? Do I have a motion?
I move that Councilmember Montgomery is removed from voting on this petition.
G. Do I have a second?
G3.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Mr. Montgomery is excused from G3. If you'll present it, please. You just did, all right.
I move that we accept item G3.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. We'll now go to G4, and I have also been informed by the city attorney that Mr. Montgomery needs to be excused on this. Do I have a motion?
I move that Councilmember Montgomery is recused from voting on G4.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Item G4, consideration of modifications to agreements with the Housing Authority of the city of Winston-Salem.
Go ahead.
Resolution authorizing modifications to 2 agreements for rental assistance with the Housing Authority of the city of Winston-Salem, and an ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina for the fiscal year 2016-2017.
I know we do this every year. Any questions anyone may have? Ms. Adams? Mr. Brooks, why don't you come on up in case somebody has a question here?
I guess it's just a comment, maybe kind of like a question. Again, I know we do this practically every year, but it's becoming a bigger number. Am I right, Mr. Brooks? And can you just tell us in a couple of sentences as to why, the public?
This number has increased because the number of clients are increasing, and as always, we have not the grant, we have not gotten approval, or the grants have not been executed with HUD. So in order for us to move forward with this, there has to be this bridge funding, and there is currently a balance of $43,000 that we need to pay Halls, but we only have $28,000 remaining. So we are suggesting and recommending to council that we use those remaining funds under the current contract and then add another $30,000 to bridge these funds in order to meet the increased expenditure. Realizing that if we get the funds before next month, then this exercise won't be needed. But there is a possibility that we may have to do this again, but it's still just a bridge and sort of a loan, because when the funds are approved, then it's paid back.
What's the time frame? How far behind is HUD?
Oh, anywhere from, I wanted to say 30, but I think I'll extend that maybe to 60 days.
And we do this every year, so they're 2 months out of 12 behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're falling behind more.
All right.
Move forward.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Thank you very much. The last one is G5.
Item G5, consideration of items authorizing a loan of up to $1,600,000 for acquisition, demolition, and rehabilitation repair in the support of 79 units of multifamily rental housing known as the New Hope Manor.
I know this was discussed last month. It was held in committee because there were a number of questions, and they are attached at the beginning. I think it looks like to me there was 4 issues brought up, and then behind that is the paperwork from it. Mr. Brooks, why don't you just reintroduce this to us? Give us a 1-minute reintroduction of what we're talking about here.
Yes, this particular item is one where it would authorize a loan of up to 1.6, which last month when it was presented, it was 1.7 for the acquisition, demolition, and rehab in support of 79 units of multifamily housing at New Hope Manor. In this particular item, Halls would acquire and rehab the units, of which there are currently 110, and all but 79 would be demolished, and HUD would then operate it as affordable housing, of which they have indicated that all the units will be 2-bedroom units renting for $475 a month, and they have agreed to set aside 1 unit for the city to use for its purposes in relocation. When we originally presented this item, staff had suggested utilizing $320,000 in housing finance assistance funds, which were to be released from the old Brown Elementary School project, and $1.3 million from the general obligation bond. At that time, Councilmember Montgomery expressed some concern about that, so we have since decreased that funding amount from 1.7 to 1.6 in order to then reallocate those to not use the $320,000 of housing finance funds for this project. So HUD is here and they are prepared to answer any questions. I think the other concern that we had was
Halls. You said HUD.
You said HUD, but
I'm sorry, Halls. Halls is here.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Wood sitting back there. I'm going to get you up in just a second.
To answer any questions, because another concern that was expressed was the overall condition of the units and the amount of work that was being done for these particular units, which at the time, I can't remember, but their cost now is approximately, I think, about $13,000 per unit on the 79 units.
Mr. Woods, can you come on up while we're... There, if you give your name and address for the record, please, and then if you just want to take maybe 2 minutes if you want to summarize this project from your perspective.
Yes, my name is Larry Wood, Chief Executive Officer for the Housing Authority, Winston-Salem. Address is 500 West 4th Street. Winston-Salem zip code is 2710101. We have been trying to work with the existing owners and the bank. Our goal, because this project sits right in the middle of our Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant area, we have applied for a $30 million grant, and our goal is to acquire this property, and if we're successful in receiving the grant, we would then, every resident that is in place with the lease would then be entitled to all the federal protection, which would be a voucher. There would be comprehensive supportive services that would be available to them, and they would have the ability to return to a brand new redeveloped northeast area, Cleveland Avenue. We have been answering as many questions as we can. We did receive and requested a copy of the city's deficiency report per apartment. We then sent staff out, and we then visited every unit that was occupied, at least 3 to 4 units in every building, and met with each resident individually while we were in the apartment. They were very gracious enough to allow us to walk through, and we then did a complete write-up. We then spent a few minutes with each resident to ask them about other problems that may have they're experiencing that we need to be aware of, and we included that in our scope of work. When we compared that to the deficiency report, we have found that our scope of work not only removes all the city deficiencies, but far exceeds what the minimum building code would require. So we're putting new appliances in every unit. We're refurbishing the cabinets, repairing or replacing hot water heaters and HVAC systems, improving the lighting, removing any deficiencies as relate to electrical work, etc. We also then met with the police department. We had a good meeting because we were concerned about the safety of the area. When I visited the area, there was an open drug market of people selling drugs running in and out of the vacant buildings. We recommended, and they also thought it was a good idea, is to demolish the vacant buildings. Also to clean up any type of overgrowth in the area where people could hide. So we're prepared to include that in our scope of work. We also said that we would put up additional lighting and install security cameras, and we would also hire off-duty officers. So we think we've done a great deal of work. The last question that was brought to our attention was, would the owners be willing to take some kind of loss on the properties? And I believe we have prepared and given the city staff a letter from the bank explaining exactly how much the owners will be losing if this sale goes through.
Thank you. Ms. Burke, go ahead and start.
That's the important thing. I could have made the statement that Councilwoman Adams made just great for that area. When we look at that particular area, there was a Burke Village that they named, as well as Ladera Crest. When we look at Ladera Crest, it has been in existence and it looks very good. That resource center that Mr. Montgomery spoke about that will be in the rolling hills where people can come together and they can nurture the children, get the contact with the schools and the parents, and have someone on a daily basis, and also not worrying about keeping them filled with tenants who are not acceptable. Ladera Crest is last because they don't try to keep them filled. They try to manage them and make sure people are going to do the things that they need to do. So I could sit here and eat up and talk a lot of talk about my disappointment. As I think about this, I think about Mr. Tabor coming down, talking about what a good person he wanted to be. He equipped us up as elected officials, but he became a slumlord. That's just all clear as that. Mr. Crumley, I've never met, but he also joined the list. And what I look at is really the big picture. And the big picture is the money that we have spent on Liberty Street. The big picture is not only the money on Liberty Street, but what we have spent even with our dollars HUD with Choice Neighborhoods to study. Mm-hmm. And then the big picture is what we're going to invest into the park up there. And it is sitting on a street where people, when they drive through, they'll be able to stop because it's going to be a beautiful park. But then if we have what's there, that undesirable mess, then no matter how hard we try to encourage people to want to use the market, to want to walk up and down Liberty Street, it's going to be a problem. So I have to just go with what I feel would be the best overall of this city. And I want to say to Mr. Wood, I have not read all of this report that you gave me, but you do a thorough job. in doing your research, and I thank you. I like, as a former educator, I like to see people do a job good from A to B, and this is a good report. Also, one question I would ask you concerning the requirements for the people to live in the unit. I know in public housing we have too many people not working. The new areas that you're doing, you have some guidelines. What would be the guidelines to keep them from hanging the street from 8 a.m. to p.m. around the clock?
We will not be using our public housing lease. We'll be using a modified lease that's accepted by the North Carolina Department of Real Estate. Also, too, this is a market rate unit. It will not have any HUD subsidy on the unit. We have agreed to keep the rents affordable for what that area, which is about $450 to $475 for the average apartment. So we think that we can do a very good job. Plus, with a off-duty police officer present and the security cameras and the increased lighting, we think those will serve as a deterrent, particularly by demolishing and removing all the vacant buildings. Right now, it's a place where, again, drug trafficking is taking place. It's a lot of trespassing, and that was one of the complaints that the residents spoke to us, is that people are entering that property in the evening, and they're hanging out on that property, and no one is ever trying to help move them. We would clearly clean all that up.
Yes, now the city has work up in that area, and we've done some things, but the owners have not joined like they should have joined in trying to eliminate some of the problems there. It's not a decision that I'm happy about saying I agree. I want you to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to think about even the people in the area that had to sacrifice and be mistreated and not treated as respectful humans. I don't think they should continue to live in that area, in that atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And also, I think what you should do when you do have residents, you need to let them know these apartments that they live in, they may pay a low rent, but these are not low rent apartments.
That's
They're
correct.
being subsidized.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they go in there with the right attitude, that this is a place that you can live, you can be comfortable. And I just want to see our dollars, Mr. Chairman, and committee, finance committee, and the mayor and council people sitting here. I want to not see our dollars go down the drain, those that we've already spent.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burke. Mr. Montgomery, you have a comment?
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Woods earlier, and I told him of my challenge on this particular item. In particular, in terms of when we look at the dollar amount that would be loaned out to do the work, there's no argument, there's no need to try to convince me of the need to deal with the distasteful conditions that exist there. I drove by again over the weekend, passed and rode through the neighborhood, and again see the issues that exist there, and one of the burnt-out buildings that exist on the backside of the property. But for me, the question is more of when we look at the dollar amount investment, just when we look at the conversation prior to around Rolling Hills and the conditions that were existing there. And initially, they were looking at similar dollar amount of investment in the property. And so if we're trying to deal with the core issue of what exists there, do we really make the impact by making this type of investment, or do we put a Band-Aid on it? And if there are intentional desires for other uses for the property later, do we throw good money after bad by temporarily doing this, or is there a better way to deal with it? If it's a need to get control of the property for the long-range plan, how could we work towards doing that and finding different housing arrangements for individuals who live in the community? That's something that I'd personally be open to trying to help figure out, but not Band-Aiding what I would believe is Band-Aiding a problem that I think is going to need more than what's going to be invested into the property. And I don't know if you have any.
Well, the scope of work that we've obviously put together, and I am familiar with Rolling Hills, the occupied units, the ones that are closer to the management office, are in very good shape. There are some slight plumbing problems. The biggest issue is that there is no maintenance going on in terms of tenant work orders. Tenants complain about HVAC units not working. Not that their plumbing is backing up, or there's leaking faucets or leaking roofs or the windows. There are some of that, but it's very minor. The biggest issue right now is with this heat. The management is telling them that if you want an air conditioning unit, you need to go out and buy your own air conditioning, and these residents can't afford that. The other biggest issue is safety. That is one of their biggest complaints. My biggest concern are the vacant buildings. What I don't want to see is the youngsters on that property begin to play in these vacant buildings, and just like over this past weekend, there was a fire. Luckily, no one was injured. That property really is a visual nuisance, and it's a hazard for the kids that are there. We believe that by demolishing those buildings, cleaning up the area, putting in security cameras, keeping those units that are occupiable in a lot better condition, that would meet, again, and surpass the minimum code requirement, that would attract working families to come and live there. And if we're able to get the HUD grant, it will be a win-win for everyone.
Okay, and a question, and I'm asking Mr. Brooks, if this is one maybe for Mr. Brooks and City Attorney. And this is a condemnation question, particularly on vacant units that exist there that fail to meet our standard. Does this not fall into the ability for us to condemn and demolish? I know we can't do that for the entireness unit by unit, but if it meets that standard, does this not give us that authority and based upon value, which would be based on, in terms of rental unit is how they would base value, so value would be based on unoccupied units, which is that a better method of dealing with the issue?
I would hesitate to say it might be a better method, but in response to the question, yes, if you have a building and all of the units in the building are vacant, and it's determined that the building, the cost to repair in relation to the cost of that building would exceed 65%, then yes, the building would be in the demolition category and would be eligible under the city's definition and purview for demolition. One of the challenges that we've had is we have not been able to get into the units to thoroughly assess the condition other than the inspector. So, in terms of the stated cost to repair in relation to what the units look like, I can't tell you myself that number is one that I would feel comfortable with. And in relation to, as you said, the previous project, which went from 13 to 42, there's a big difference. And if one were to believe all of the hype that's been voiced about the units, there could be some questions still. But until we were able to get in and do a thorough review ourselves, I just couldn't tell you categorically that we would be in agreement with that.
I did.
Let me get here. He is in.
And my question goes to the purchase price. Now, I realize that the sellers are taking a $700,000 haircut, which they're not profiting by this, which I think is appropriate. But we're acting as a bank here. Was there an appraisal done on this property? We're going to be backing this loan, and do we really know what it's worth? I mean, this doesn't seem to me like it's an arm's length transaction. So how do we arrive at a purchase price?
Yes. Kevin, I'll have Kevin Cheshire, Vice President of Development Attorney.
Give your name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, sir. Kevin Cheshire, General Counsel and Vice President of Real Estate Development for the Winston-Salem Housing Authority, 500 West 4th Street. I was just sharing with Mr. Woods when I was requesting documentation when we first assessing this transaction. There was an appraisal ordered by the bank. It was within the last 18 months. I think it was within the last 12 months, and it came back at 266.
What was that? Do you know what type of an appraisal was it? Was it a cost appraisal? Was it a market appraisal?
It was a market appraisal. Yes, sir. And I'll be happy to share that with council.
I'd be curious to see that.
Yes, sir.
To me, that sounds.
Can we get that
generous.
included for the Monday night meeting?
Yes, sir. Okay. I've got it electronically. I can just forward it to staff.
Your best recollection was 2.66?
I know that number is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just don't know when it was done.
Okay, and what is the current purchase price?
1.9.
1.9. All right, thank you.
Yes,
we'll
sir.
get that, Mr. McIntosh, Ms. Berkeley.
There were several things, comments that Mr. Montgomery made, like Band-Aid job. That needs to be addressed.
Yes, ma'am.
If it's a Band-Aid job, we just throwing the money away. And then The other question, some of the people have been emailing me, want to know if the people who own it, are they going to make money? You need to answer that question. And then the next question that you need to answer, how well is it going to be supervised? I know you say you talk about the camera and you'll have a police up there. How is it going to be managed to make sure these children and these people are going to be comfortable in the atmosphere?
Okay, let me just go first concerning the comment of a Band-Aid. We did buy 12 units through an auction across the street of the 36 East development, and we renamed it Bethlehem Point. And we put about $12,000 to $15,000 per unit in each of those units. And the residents that were there were more than appreciative, and we had welcomed anyone to come and see it. The units were spotless when we got finished. New appliances, cabinets refurbished, new locks on doors, replacing doors, fixing all the windows, replacing floors, both in the units and in the public corridors. That is the same type of design setup that New Hope Manor has. In terms of on-site supervision, we will have an on-site manager and on-site maintenance right there at the site. So we think that would also give it a level of control there. Also, we've also talked to the police about repairing all the existing fencing that is there to keep trespassers from going in and out. That has been a big problem. So we believe by putting back a lot of the wrought iron fencing will give us more site control, and through the demolishment of the buildings will have a great deal of impact on site control. The vacant properties, we have agreed to maintain and keep the debris. We have a contract with a lawn care company, so during the summertime, the grass would not be overgrown, and we have our own sanitation department that would go out and pick up any trash or any short dumping that would take place. We think that would have a big impact on how well the tenants feel comfortable and safe at that particular area.
Just like you talked about demolition, some people talk about eminent domain.
Mm-hmm.
Some you didn't go in, and why we didn't do it that way.
That I don't know. I do know that there is a few buildings where folks are living on the second floor that we have labeled uninhabitable because the raw sewage from that apartment just runs right out into the apartment downstairs. So we do want to consolidate as we can on site, and those buildings that we know are not habitable is just demolish them.
Another question, they say, would it be best for us to just relocate all the folks there? And some might say yes, and if we relocated them, what's going to happen to the site? What would it do to the investment that we've already made up here?
I guess the question is for the units that you're going to rehab, the people that are living in there, how will you rehab them while someone's living there?
There'll probably be a temporary exiting of probably one building that we would then cover that cost off site. And then as we fix that building, we'll then transfer families over and vacate building by building, apartment by apartment.
So move people from a unrenovated to a renovated?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Would someone comment, I don't know if it's your attorney or you, Ms. Burke also asked the question of the owners, reiterate how much the bank loan is and how much we're paying or being paid.
Yes, sir. So there were two notes on the property. The original amount lent on the first note was $1.8 million. The current payoff amount on that note is approximately $1.5 million.
Okay.
The second note, the original amount lent was $1.1 million. The current payoff amount on that note is $1.074.
So roughly 1.1.
Yes, sir. And then, of course, the sales price being 1.9. So looking at about 2.5 that the bank's holding.
2.5. So someone's taking a $600,000 haircut.
Yes, sir. The bank's taking that haircut, and then I've got an affidavit from Bob Crumley, one of the owners, reciting the equity contribution of both partners. One just shy of $500,000, and one at just over $550,000.
Mr. Chairman, they're not walking away with
Correct.
Right. Yeah. All the money's going to the bank.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Burke. I mean, Ms. Adams, excuse me.
I just want to make a comment and a question to staff. I don't think they took a haircut on any of this. However long they've been in this business, they've made money. They wouldn't have gone in it in the first place if the owners didn't make money. So to not get $600,000 and the bill is paid, it's like a bankruptcy. They're okay with it. They're just trying to unload it. The monies I noticed in the report that we had said where staff, you recommended that the money comes from the housing, community development block, no, the housing, what is it, the neighborhood housing development bonds. That 1.6 comes from there because that's the balance in the account on page 28. I was wondering, you said 28 of G5. It said if it's approved, it tells us that all the money will now be gone of the $6 million that we are allocated out of the 2014, I guess, bonds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're saying that we should, they want 1.7, we give them 1.6, which is the balance in the account. And you felt like that was the best resource for this. But yet you included all of it, and I appreciate all the documentation that you gave us on all of the fund balance accounts. But one of the things that we've said in the past is we have fund balances on commitments that have been committed for 3 or 4 or 5 years that have not been pulled down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Then why wouldn't we look at some of that money, if this is approved, on some of these projects? And you can send that in the package on Thursday or get it to council. But I've looked at some on this list, and I know we haven't probably given this money out. And I think we as a council, as we said before, we got a project that has the council member of the ward, people in the community. We now need to go back and look at these projects that people came to us in good faith, and they told us they were going to do something, and it is now 4 or 5 years or 3 or 4 years later, and they still haven't done anything. This money now needs to be going to somewhere where the need is. So I would ask staff to come back and bring us, or include in the Thursday packet, some other alternatives to the 1.6 all coming out of the GO bonds. But look at some of these other commitments that we have yet to pull down. Give us a history, short in another column, what year this money was requested and approved, and whether yes or no have they pulled these funds down and to what extent.
Yes, we can do that. And I might add that these commitments were as of a certain time period.
June
For
30th.
instance, if you were to look at the Community Development Block Grant Fund, you might see a balance of 2.5. But it doesn't take into consideration, for instance, like under your rehab loans.
Correct.
Those funds aren't counted until they're actually drawn down and expended.
Correct.
So you currently have at least 20, 25 contracts that are waiting to get started from contractors where funds have been obligated but can't be drawn down until the projects are finished. That will take that current 2.5 down another 500,000, and probably another 15 to 20 that you want to get under contract before the end of this year. So we can do what you've asked, and what would probably help if those anticipated projects and expenditures are added to this, so you can somewhat get a picture of today and propose.
So you know where I'm going with this?
Yes,
you know
I
where
do.
I'm going with this, don't you?
Yes.
Thank you.
I am way over, so I would have Mr. Taylor's raise his hand, then I would like to come with some resolution here. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions will be brief. Mr. Brooks or Mr. Woods, how many of these properties are currently vacant? I know you talked about demolishing some of the vacant properties. So is there anyone who can speak to that?
Currently, right now, we are proposing demolishing about almost 50 to 60 units.
60 units?
Yes. Some of the buildings are completely vacant, where it has been completely stripped of all copper, of all wiring, HVAC unit, appliances are just removed. There are a few buildings that there may be 1 or 2 occupants in that we think is unsafe, and so we would like to consolidate and move those families into the portion that we're going to save, and then demolish those buildings completely because they have major plumbing problems. We've explained to the city earlier that in our walkthrough we found one unit where there's a there's inability for one of the apartments to cut the water off, and the water just runs right outside. I don't know who's paying the water bill, but it runs right outside. But because of that running water, when you go inside the unit, mold has grown up the wall to almost 6-7 feet up the wall. We just finished an environmental contract. The contractor went out about a week ago. We just got the report in this afternoon, so we can share the environmental report done by a third party, certified environmental company.
It'd be good to see that as well. There was a fire over the weekend,
Yeah.
what I understand. How many of those units were damaged?
I'm not sure, but that building, I think, was one of the ones was slated to be demolished. It was not
Okay, I was
fully
curious
occupied.
whether that was included in the number that were vacant.
It was, the problem that we've been having, 50% of the units are occupied. It appears that only half of those have legal residence in terms of they have a lease. So there are a lot of squatters or trespassers who are living there right now.
And I guess my overall question is your willingness to purchase the property denotes to me that eventually you will see a return on your investment. I know you want to do the city a favor, work with the community in that area, but eventually you will see a return on your investment. I'm thinking with 60-plus units, however many were damaged in the fire, will we be able to recoup our investment if we've got so many units offline?
Part of the recoupment is based in some of the contract language, as Mr. Brooks stated. We are setting aside one unit. The value of that unit on an annual basis will be applied towards the principal. We also agreed to pay a minimum of $10,000 a year pilot that will start, I think, in year 4. Again, and that payment will be going against the principal.
And help me with that pilot. Is that payment in lieu of taxes?
Payment in lieu of
Okay.
taxes.
All right.
If we're able to get the implementation grant, any outstanding debt owed to the city at that time would be satisfied as soon as we have a developer on board to develop that property back into home ownership or rental units.
Okay.
May I suggest there are a few questions outstanding that we move this forward to the full committee without recommendation. And if the follow-up questions, one is, there seem to be some buckets of money that there's money in the bucket, but there's encumbrances against it or obligations against it, so a little more information there would be helpful. But can I get a motion if there is one to move it forward without recommendation?
So moved.
We have a motion second to move it forward without recommendation with Mr. Brooks coordinating additional information. Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarity in reference to Councilmember Taylor's question around return on investment. Now, the long-term impact is that if, in fact, you're successful with receiving the Choice Neighborhood grant, that the entirety of the property will be demolished for new development.
That's correct.
Right. I just want that to be.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move forward without recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have 3 in favor, 1 opposed. Mr. Taylor, what time would you like to start public safety?
Public safety will begin 6:30.
6:30. Thank you.